Okay, hey everyone. Welcome to my channel, Tutorlini Test Prep. My name is Kyle. I have been a test prep professional for about 3 years now. I tutor all sections of the SAT, and I scored a perfect score of 800 on the SAT Math section twice now. And this is going to be a continuation of my walkthrough series for the digital SAT Math. I appreciate your patience with this. It's taking me a lot of time to put these PDFs together and go over these questions. Um, I'm going to be trying to put out about one a week, and at least through to the digital SAT practice test 4. And then after that, I'll probably do some of the non-adaptive ones, but we'll see about that. One key difference from this video from the last one, and I'm going to try to do this going forward, is I'm going to try to, as we're going, remind you that in addition to using the graphing calculator, you can use Desmos, okay? And so I'm going to have it up on the screen here. Desmos is going to be built into the Blue Book app, and it is a really, really powerful tool for lots of questions, in particular systems of equations, and you'll see as we go through it. So I'm going to try to give you as many ways as possible to solve each question, and I'm always going to try to highlight what the most important, what the fastest way is, and I am definitely going to take my time and go slow so that you understand every single question. So I hope this video helps you. Okay, let's get started with Module 1. This is question 1, Module 1. So 4x plus 6 equals 18. So I'm going to, whenever we solve an equation, we want to move the farthest thing first. So there's a 4 and a 6. And you see that the 6 is farther away from the x. So we're going to move the 6 first. And we get 4x equals 12. And that is answer choice C. So we don't have to actually solve the whole thing. That is just our answer. Okay, great. All right, so there's a lot of stuff that you need to know about parallel lines on the test. Okay, there's a couple things you need to know about: corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, and same side interior angles. I highly recommend the chapter on angles in the College Panda book. I'm not a huge fan of the College Panda book, but the College Panda angles chapter is really good. It sums up what you need to know about this in a nice little picture really easily. So what you need to know is when you have parallel lines is that the corresponding angles are equal. So like this one's equal to this one, the top left is equal to the top left, the bottom right is equal to the bottom right, and the bottom left is equal to the bottom left. So corresponding angles are equal. So you see how the 170 and the W, they're both in the same spot. That means that they are equal. So W equals 170. And that's it. That's the whole question for this one. So the answer is D. Okay. This one's asking us for the mean. Mean is just another word for average. Mean is sum divided by n. N is the number of data values you have. Sum is just the sum. N is we also call that the sample size. So we add up all the numbers on our calculator. 6 plus 10 plus 13 plus 2 plus 15 plus 22 plus 10 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. And we get 90. N is the number of data points. So for this one, you just count them. There are 10. 90 divided by 10 is 9. So the mean is 9. All right, next question. So for this one, we got an equation, and R is the number of reptiles, and they tell us there's 16 reptiles. So what that means is, that means that R is 16. So we're going to plug 16 into the equation for R. Again, you can use the calculator to help you. 5 times 16 is 80. We subtract 80 from both sides, and we get 2.5b equals 0. Now we divide both sides by 2.5, and 0 divided by anything is just 0. So there are 0 birds. So that would be answer choice A. All right, let's keep going. So the formula that you need to know, I'm not the best at drawing these, but just humor me. So if the side length is S, you want to know that the volume of a cube is S cubed for a cube. And you want to know that the surface area is 6S squared. Those are two equations that you definitely want to have memorized going into the test. Okay, so for this one, we're going to use volume equals S cubed. So volume, the edge length, that is the side length. Edge length of 41, so S is 41. Then you just type in 41 cubes under calculator and make sure the units are correct. So they gave us inches and they want cubic inches, so we're good. And I get 68,921. And that's answer choice D for 5. 5 is D. All right. Okay, there's a couple of ways to do this one. For percent problems like this, I like to use this equation from grade school: is over of equals percent over 100. So you see the thing next to the is the 13. The thing next to the of is the 25. And the percent is P. So we plug all those in, and I'll just put a box around this. So we get 13 over 25 equals P over 100. Now you just either multiply both sides by 100, or you can cross multiply. So 25P cross multiply. So like this one is equal to this one multiplied together. So 25P equals 1300. Divide both sides by 25, and we get P equals 52. All right. So the answer for 6 is 52. All right, let's move on to 7. Okay. So for this one, this is you see all these equations basically look like a times b to the x. So remember, a times b to the x. A is your starting y value, also the y-intercept, and b is your growth slash decay rate. The growth slash decay rate is the number that y is being multiplied by when x goes up by 1. That's important, okay? So it says the starting population is 15,000. So that tells you that A is 15,000, starting population, right? And now we get B. So right away, A and B are wrong, right? They don't have the right starting population, right? Okay, and now it says it increased by 4% compared to the previous year. So you're going to do a percent multiplier. So remember, for percent multipliers, an increase, you multiply by 1 plus the decimal. And for the decrease, you multiply by 1 minus the decimal. So this is an increase. So first we're going to make it a decimal. So 4 divided by 100. And you don't even need to do this in your head. You can just do it on your calculator. 4 divided by 100, you get 0.04. Now you're going to do 1 plus that. 1 plus 0.04. Okay, calculator tells me that's 1.04. I'm sure you could get some program that could do that for you, but I highly recommend you know how to do that just because it comes up so often. Okay, so this is D. You see what they did wrong here is that's actually a 4% decrease. They did 1 minus 0.04, and that was just to confuse us. So when you have a times b to the x, if you got a percent in there, the percent is probably telling you the b, okay? So the 4% increase, that told us the b. The starting amount, that's always your a, the number that goes out in front. Okay, so 7 is D. All right, let's look at 8. So there's a lot of ways to do this one. First of all, I want to point out we can do this straight on Desmos. You can solve any equation on Desmos, okay, just by typing in the left side and then typing in the right side and seeing where they intersect. And I highly recommend you bring a mouse to the test. I'll show you why in a minute. So I'm going to do this one just literally without knowing anything. So negative 4x squared minus 7x. Okay, that's the left side of the equation. And then the right side is negative 36. Let's do y equals the left side and then y equals the right side, just so that they both get plotted. And you see now, I'm gonna use my scroll wheel to very easily zoom out. You can also do this on a touch screen. And you see this is where it intersects these 2 points, right? So we got negative 4, but it wants the positive solution, so we must want this one. 2.25. Okay. Now we can go here and we can type in 2.25, and if we click this button, it'll change it to a fraction, 9/4. Okay, let's go back to the test. So the answer is B, 9/4. See how handy Desmos can be? That's a shortcoming of my last video. I didn't really do a good job highlighting that. I'm gonna try to do that in the future. If you wanted to solve this by hand, I would get all the terms to one side. So I'd add the 36 over. And then we like to have a positive sign out in front. So I'm going to multiply the whole thing by -1. So 4x squared plus 7x minus 36 equals 0. Now to solve this, what you would have to do is, and again, the answers are 9/4 and -4. So what you would have to do to solve this by hand, so what you would want to do is you'd want to get a 1 out in front. So your first instinct should be to factor out a 4 or to divide the whole thing by 4. But you notice if we do that, we run into a problem. 7 is not divisible by 4, and we certainly don't want fractions when we do this, right? So to do this one by hand, you'd have to factor it using what's called the AC method. And you almost never have to do AC method on the test. Almost never, like literally almost never. Like there's almost always another way to do it. Like either by guess and check or by using the calculator. So I'm not going to go through it because it would probably take me like 10 or 15 minutes to teach. And like I said, you really don't need to know it. If you're curious, I highly recommend you Google AC method worksheet, factoring by AC method worksheet, or YouTube, factoring by AC method. I'm sure you'll find lots of helpful examples, and then you can figure out how to do this one. Anyway, let me see what it factors to. Yeah, if you use the AC method, you'll get like, I don't know, 4x plus 2, x minus 8, so something like that, and then you can find the solutions. Like I said, I'm not going to go through it. I highly recommend you just use your own graphing calculator or use Desmos to solve this one. See how fast that was? I just typed in the left side, typed in the right side, and I got the answer. Okay, anyway, let's move on. Okay, so standard deviation is a measure of spread. Okay. So okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm gonna do 8. I don't know. These aren't exactly the same, but anyway, so standard deviation is a measure of spread. So if something is more spread out, it has a higher standard deviation. So this one is more spread out, so it has a higher standard deviation. And this one has a lower standard deviation. There's a formula for it, and your calculator can actually compute it pretty easily for you. But you don't need to do that. You just need to be able to compare two of them on the test. So if one's more spread out, it has a higher standard deviation. If one's more closely packed together, it's got a lower standard deviation. Now, if they're spatially arranged exactly the same, they have the same standard deviation. So you see, that's the case in this one. See how both of these, they're literally like, it's literally the exact same spatial arrangement. It doesn't matter the values on the bottom. What matters is how they're spread out. So we've got 1, then we've got 3, then we've got 4, 5, etc. They're both spatially arranged exactly the same. So that means the standard deviations are equal. So we would go with answer choice B because it says is equal. I hope that helps. This gets tested on quite a bit, and kids always forget about it. So remember, you don't have to compute it, but um, but you do have to know how to compare them. So more spread out means bigger standard deviation. Closer together, less spread out, smaller standard deviation. Okay, for this one, it says how many values of x does f of x equal 0? So f of x is the same as y. So how many values of x does y equal 0? Well, whenever we have y equals 0, that's an x-intercept. So it's asking you how many x-intercepts. Okay, let's circle them. 1, 2, 3. 3 x-intercepts. That's it. Whenever you have y or f of x equals 0, it's an x-intercept. Whenever you have x equals 0, it's a y-intercept. Always remember, it's the other one, right? So if one of them, if x is 0, the other one, it's the y-intercept. If y is 0, it's the x-intercept. Y and f of x are synonymous. You should know that. They are interchangeable. All right. So 10 is C. Let me just check to make sure that's right. That's right. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so anytime they give you an equation and a point, you're going to plug in the point. So the thing inside the parentheses of the function notation is x, and the thing on the other side is y, or in this case, g. Okay. So we're going to plug it into the equation. So we get 2375 equals 19 times a, and then x is 3, so cubed. I'm going to try to solve for a now. So let me divide both sides by 19. 2375 divided by 19. Again, I'm using a calculator. That gives me 125 equals a cubed. Now we're going to take the cube root of both sides. So the cube root of a cubed is just a, and the cube root of 125 is just 5. Let me just quickly, because I feel like lots of people don't know how to do this, let me just show you how to do the cube root on the calculator. So you press math, and then you scroll down to the fourth option. You could also recognize that the cube root is the 1/3 power. So you could type in 125 to the 1/3, but I imagine that's more confusing. So anyway, and I'm also sure Desmos has a button that can do this, but either way. For me, whenever I'm doing arithmetic, I'd rather use the physical calculator because I can use my thumbs and I'll go faster than typing on the computer. That's just me personally. If you think Desmos is easier to do computations on, you can do it. I'm just not going to be doing a lot of that because I'm so used to the TI-84. I'm a master. You're going to learn from these videos. I'm a master of the TI-84 plus CE, but I don't really know a lot about Desmos, at least by comparison. So. Okay, so a is 5, and again, we just did all that on the calculator, doing some algebra. Okay. So g of x equals 19 times 5 to the x. Okay. And now it wants us to find g of 4. So that means we're going to make x 4, right? Remember, the thing inside the parentheses is always x, your input. So g of 4 equals 19 times 5 to the 4. And now you just type that in your calculator, and you should get 11875. And that's the final answer. So let me just check again that works. Yep. Okay, great. Okay, nothing too crazy. You just got to understand the function notation. And again, just a test taking tip, whenever they give you an equation and a point, like for example, this point, another way to write this is 3, 2375, right? So if they give you an equation and a point, and there's a constant that you don't know, odds are, right, you got to plug in that point. That's what they want you to do, right? So just even though they don't say that, that's what they want you to do, okay? All right, this one, oh my God, like this is the epitome of Desmos is king here. Any systems of equations question, you can just type in on Desmos. So let's do that. So let me clear all this. I'm going to just refresh. So y equals x minus 2, x plus 4, and y equals 6x minus 12. What's the solution to the system? Okay, so it's like, it's here, it says 2, 0. You just click on it. That's it, we're done. I don't know why this is a question, but whatever. Okay, so the answer is C, 2, 0. That's it. I'm gonna go over how to do it by hand just in case you get one with like letters in it, and then you have to do it by hand. So this is called a linear quadratic system. So we've got a line and a quadratic. So this is a line, and this is a quadratic. So whenever you have a system like that, you want to substitute for y. For this one, what's really nice is y is by itself already. So I can just set them equal because they're equal, right? I can just substitute this one into here, okay? So I'm going to do that. So I get x minus 2, x plus 4 equals 6x minus 12. And now I FOIL, and I get x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 6x minus 12. Again, you do x squared plus 4x minus 2x minus 8, and then you combine the like terms. Okay, now I move all the terms to one side. So I'm going to subtract 6x, and then I'm going to add 12. And you should get x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0. This gives you, if you factor it, it's x minus 2 squared. So the only solution is x equals 2. And then if you plug in x equals 2 into one of the original equations, let's say either or, I'll do the first one. If I plug in x equals 2, that becomes 0, so I get y equals 0. So 2 comma 0. So that's how you would do it if you were going to do it by hand. And you still need to know how to do that. So that's why I went through it. But again, on the actual test, just type this in. It'll take you 20 seconds, okay? Just type this question in, get it right, and move on. I'm just doing it because I want you guys to understand, just in case you get a harder one, right? All right, let's look at 13. So what you got to know about similarity statements, that's what this thing is. This is called a similarity statement, is that the order of the letters tells you the order in which the sides are proportional, and it tells you the order in which the corresponding angles are equal. So, do you see how it says F corresponds to J? That's because F came first and J came first. So even if they didn't tell you that, you should have been able to figure that out, okay? So that tells you if angles correspond, they're equal in similar triangles. So similar triangles, the corresponding side lengths are proportional, 1, and 2, the corresponding angles are equal. So measure of angle F is equal to measure of angle J. And if that's the case, their trig ratios are equal too, right? So sine of F is equal to sine of J. Okay, well, sine of F is 308 over 317, so that must mean that sine of J is also 308 over 317. That's it. You don't have to do any work for this question. You just have to understand the similarity statement. So if two corresponding angles are equal, their trig ratios are also equal. All right. So 13 is good. All right, that's it. All right, 14. So this is a slightly more complicated exponential, different from the one I just taught you before. So the equation goes like this: a times b to the t over n. So a again is the starting value, starting y value, or the y-intercept. B is the growth/decay rate. T is just time. That's basically just x, but I changed the x to a t because in word problems like this one, they use t. Right? Usually our independent variable in real life is time. Not always, but a lot of times it is. Okay, so the t is time, but you've got this new letter n, and that wasn't there before, right? So n is the interval. The interval is how often the growth rate is fully applied. So for this one, it says, how much time does it take for the number of bacteria in the population to double? So you see how it's doubling because it's multiplied by 2, because b is 2. So that means the y values are getting multiplied by 2. Okay. So so and again, t and n always have the same units. So because t is in minutes, n is going to be in minutes. So it says, how long does it take for it to double? It's asking you, how long does it take for that growth rate to be fully applied? It's asking you, what's the interval? And you see that's just the 410. That's it. You just look at it. So the interval is 410 minutes. That's the whole question. That's it. You just got to look at it. I'm going to do maybe a harder one off to the side as an example, or a couple more. So let's say that I said we were doing, I don't know, we had 20 starting bacteria and they triple every 8 minutes. So we would plug it into the formula, a times b to the t over n. So y equals 20. Triple means multiply by 3 to the t over 8. You have to be able to go back and forth between the words and the equation on the test very quickly. Sometimes they give you the equation and you got to give the words. Sometimes they give you the words and they ask for the equation. Okay, let's do one more, and then I don't want to spend too much time on this, but so let's say I've got 15 bacteria at the beginning, and they undergo a 60% increase every 4 minutes. Okay, so we start with 15, so y equals 15, 60% increase. That would be 0.6 as a decimal. 1 plus 0.6, that's 1.6 to the t over 4. And then what if I took all this away and I asked you to do the reverse? You see, oh, that's much harder if you go, oh, what is that as a percent? Going backwards from the percent multiplier to a percent. Well, you know that the percent multiplier is equal to 1 plus the decimal. So you know that the decimal must be equal to 0.6. And if you make that a percent, that's 60, right? So it's a 60% increase. So that's how you would do it. I'm going to do one more. $35 times 0.8 to the t over 9. So you start with 35 cells, and then 0.8. So that's between 0 and 1. So that's a decrease. So 0.8 equals 1 minus the decimal. So the decimal is equal to 0.2. So the percent is equal to 20, decrease. So it's a 20% decrease every 9 minutes. Okay. So you see, that was a hard one, right? We had to like go from the equation to the words, and we had to do the percent multiplier backwards, which lots of kids don't know how to do. So I figured I'd go over it really quickly. Okay, so I hope that helps. 14 is 410. Again, we just had to look at it. You got to know this equation I wrote on the board. Let's move on. Okay, 15. This is called a literal equation. You can find tons of practice on these literal equations. If you have a CAS calculator, it might help for some of these. I don't, so I don't do it. Whenever you see in terms of, the thing that comes before it is what you want to get by itself. So we want to get 4j plus 9 by itself. Well, I don't like that 4j plus 9 is in the denominator. So I'm going to move it by doing the opposite operation. I'm going to multiply both sides by 4j plus 9. And I get 4j plus 9, p equals k. Now I'm going to move the p, so I'm going to divide both sides by p. And I get 4j plus 9 equals k over p. And that's the answer, A. These questions are not easy. There's no shortcut. The reality is that you have to practice this many, many times until you're really good at it. Or maybe you could find some way to use a CAS calculator and it'll spit out the answer. Anyway. Okay, perpendicular. So first, again, lots of kids forget this. So before we even start, let's just go over this really quickly off to the side. So for perpendicular lines, that means they intersect at right angles. And it means that the slopes are opposite reciprocals or negative reciprocals. I like to call them opposite reciprocals. You can call them whatever you want. But this is the first thing that should be coming in your head on the SAT. So put that in your notes. So what the heck is an opposite reciprocal? So let's say the slope is 2/3. The perpendicular slope would be negative 3/2. Okay. So the slope of 2/3. So I flip it 3/2 and then I multiply by -1. So negative 3 halves. So let's do another one. So let's say I got m equals negative 4 over 7. So I flip it and multiply by negative 1, and I get 7 over 4. Now, let's do 5. So that can be a little tough for some people to see. What you can do is you can write it as 5 divided by 1, then flip it and make it negative 1 over 5. Hopefully that helps a little bit. And similarly, let's say I had 1/3. I could flip it and make it, and then multiply by negative 1 and make it 3 over 1. But again, dividing by 1, it's just the same, right? So I don't need the divided by 1. So make sure you're comfortable going back and forth between all those. So always remember, perpendicular lines, the slopes are opposite reciprocals. That's one of the most important things on the test. All right, so our first mission is to find the slope of line P. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the y by itself so that it's in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to move the 8x by subtracting 8x. So 4y equals negative 8x plus 6. Now I'm going to divide the whole thing by 4. And I get y equals negative 2x plus 3 halves. So it's 6 over 4, but that simplifies to 3 halves. So the slope of line P, this is all P, is negative 2. So we're going to do the opposite reciprocal. So negative 2 over 1. So we flip it and we get, and multiply by negative 1. So it becomes positive, and then we flip it and it becomes 1/2. So the perpendicular slope is positive 1/2. So for the answer, don't put both. You could have put 0.5 or you could have put 1/2. Don't put both, just put whatever you think is easier. Personally, I think the fraction is easier. Anyway, all right. We're doing good. We're almost done with the first module. Okay, so this is asking you for this almost like kind of feels like a trick question, but it's not. So let's say I have R and then the center's O. So ROS. And the question is telling us that this measure, that the measure of the arc, not the arc length. The arc length, that would be if I said, hey, the arc length is 6 inches. No, it doesn't say that. It says the measure of the arc, okay, is 100 degrees. So this almost seems like a trick question, but it's not. The central angle, this one in here, that's the angle made with the center, is equal to the measure of the arc. So you just write down 100. And then it says, what is the measure of angle ROS? So ROS, that's that one. So it's just 100. Yeah, it feels like a trick question, but it's not. Now, something they'll test you on is called inscribed angles, okay? And those look like this. See how the angle is not with the center, it's with the point on the circle. So the measure of this arc, let's say if that were 60. Let me just check to make sure I have this right real quick. So yeah. So if that were 60, then the angle in here would be half 30. Okay. So for central angles, the one on the left, the measure is the same. The measure of the angle is the same as the measure of the arc. Okay. But for inscribed angles, the measure of the angle is like the measure of the angle and the measure of the arc. They differ by a factor of 2. So you have to either multiply or divide by 2 depending. Okay. The thing on the right, they almost never test you on, but again, it's really closely related to this, and I figured someone might have gotten confused by it. So I figured I would just go over it really quickly. Anyway, the answer is 100. You don't have to put a degree symbol or anything. Okay, great. So for this question, what you have to do is you have to find the x-intercepts, and then you have to find the factors. So the x-intercepts or roots, let's circle them. So the first one's -5, next one's 0, and the next one is 4. The factors, if k, factor theorem says if k is a root, x minus k is a factor. So the factors are x minus k. So we're going to do x minus -5, which is just x plus 5, right? Because minus a negative. And then we're going to do x minus 0. Okay, minus 0 doesn't do anything, right? So we're just going to put x. And then we're going to do x minus 4. So those are your factors. So right away, um, without hesitation, C and D are wrong. See how they have the wrong factors? They have x minus 5 and x plus 4. Those are wrong. Okay. The lead coefficients are all negative because it's facing down. Okay. Can't do anything with that. So now you have to find what's called the multiplicity or the power. So for that, you have to look at the behavior near the x-intercept. So if it crosses through the x-axis, the power has to be odd. If it bounces, it's even. So watch. See how this one bounces? It kind of touches and then goes the other way. That means the power is even. But these guys, see how they cross? They go through the x-axis. Okay, that means they're odd. So this guy's even, this guy's odd, and this guy's odd. And most of the time on the SAT, they just use the smallest even and odd numbers because they don't want to give you an x to the 12th or something, right? Because you've never seen that in school. So you can just kind of, for the purpose of the test, most of the time, assume it will be 1 or 2. So the power, the lowest even number is 2, and the lowest odd number is 1. So we have to have something that looks like this. X times x minus 4. Okay, both of those are to the 1. And then to the 1, anything, rules of exponents, anything to the 1 is just itself, so we don't need to write it. And x plus 5 raised to the power of 2. So you should see that in your answer choice. And the only one that has that is B. So it's B. So A is wrong because x plus 5 is raised to an odd power. That would imply -5 is a crosser, but he's not. He's a bouncer. Okay, so that's wrong. So C and D have the wrong factors. A has the right factors, but it has the wrong power. B is the only one with the correct factor and the correct powers. I suppose you could also just type all these into Desmos and see which one it looks like. It's like that would probably be a really good way to do it. I mean, this would be a lot of typing, so I don't know if I would do that. But yeah, you could totally just type. I'm not going to go through it. You could totally just type in A into Desmos, see if it's right. B into Desmos, see if it's right. And honestly, that wouldn't be a bad way to get the answer. So I'll just write so that the people watching know. Desmos? You could type all these into Desmos. All right, great. Let's keep going. So that was 18. So 18 was B. Good. Okay, so 201% f of x equals 201% of x. All right, so f of x equals 201% of x. So whenever you do a percent of, you change the of to multiplication, and you change the percent to a decimal by dividing by 100. So 201%, so 201 divided by 100. I'm going to do that on my calculator so I don't make a mistake. I get 2.01 of, remember we changed to multiplication, so 2.01 times x, which is just 2.01x. Hopefully you're realizing, okay, so we've got exponential and linear. So So hopefully you're realizing it looks more like the linear function, right? Mx plus b. So these guys are out because they say exponential. And then decreasing. It would be decreasing if the slope were negative, okay? And it's increasing if the slope is positive. And you see the slope is 2.01, so the slope is positive. So it is increasing linear. So this one is wrong, okay? And exponential, how you can tell is, so remember from a times b to the x. Again, I'm not talking about the b in exponent in slope-intercept form. I'm talking about the b in exponential. So when I write this, so this one. So I'll use the same color to denote that. So you have increasing exponential when b is greater than 1. That's called exponential growth. And you have decay when 0 is less than b is less than 1. And those look like this. So growth and decay. So growth looks like this, decay looks like this. So see how decay gets smaller, so it's decreasing. Again, wasn't really relevant to the question, right? But I just figured you should know that in case another one like this came up. So if it looks like a times b to the x, it's probably exponential. If it looks like mx plus b, it's probably linear, okay? And of course, we had to understand what 201% of x meant. So remember, of becomes multiplication, and then percent, you divide by 100 to make it a decimal. That's all you do. Nothing with percent multipliers on this. Not like the other questions. Okay, so 19 is D. Great. All right, so this one. Okay, again, woo, this is a super Desmos question. Okay, so I'm just gonna write this for later. So yeah, this is a super Desmos question. So let's go to Desmos, and let's type in f of x equals 4x squared. Just give me 1 second. So let's type this in. Okay, now you can type in g of x equals f of x plus 5, just like in the question. And you see the f of x plus 5, it got shifted 5 units to the left. That's what the function notation means here. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But it wants to know what value of x does g of x reach its minimum. Okay, so let's zoom in here. And let's look at its minimum. Let's click on it. All right, it tells us it's negative 13, comma 6. Okay, so if it asked what's the minimum, we would say 6, the y value. But because it says what value of x does it reach its minimum, so it wants the x value. So let's go back to the test. So it's again, what did we say? Negative 13 comma 6. And again, because it says what's the x value, if it just said what's the minimum, you would put the y value. Because it says what value of x does it reach its minimum. So anytime you see min or max on a quadratic, you look at the vertex. Okay. And again, the x value is this one, negative 13. So the answer is negative 13. Okay, great. So you see that took like 20 or 30 seconds if you just type it in and then click. And again, using the mouse and the scroll wheel to zoom in, you can scroll up and down to make the graph zoom in and out. Okay, so if you wanted to do this by hand, there's a couple ways to do it. What I would do is I would find the I would find the x coordinate of the vertex, which is what it's asking you, by using the formula, which we call h, by the way. H equals negative b over 2a. So h equals negative 64 over 2 times 4. And we get h equals negative 8. So for f of x, the minimum takes place at negative 8. So what does the f of x plus 5 mean? So function transformations look like this: f of x minus h plus k. So you see k is 0, but negative h is 5. So that means h equals negative 5. So that means it moved 5 units to the left. And remember, the picture verified that for us, right? So it's 5 units to the left. So to move an x value 5 units to the left, what you do is you subtract 5 from it. So we're going to do negative 8 minus 5. And we get the h for g of x, the x coordinate of the vertex, is negative 8 minus 5, which is negative 13. That was a lot harder than just typing it in. Again, I still felt I should go over it because you really need to know this equation for the test, negative b over 2a. They've been asking about that a lot on these practice tests. So I guess the function transformation is something you want to know too, but it is what it is, I guess. So just give me 1 second. All right. Let's see. 21? Did I circle the right answer? 20 is A? Yep, 20 is A. Good. Okay, 21. Okay, so what you have to know here is the expected in the population is equal to the proportion times big N, which is the amount you have in the total population. So we have to figure out how many voters using this data. So there's 803 total voters. So for Cruz, we're going to do Cruz equals the proportion. So 483 Cruz voters out of a total of 803. And then times big N, which is the amount in the full population that we're going to generalize this survey to, as long as the population is selected at random, which it is. And you see it says there's 6,424 people vote in the election. So that's your population your population size, your capital N. So we're going to do times 6,424. And you need to carefully type that in a calculator using a fraction bar. And you should get 3864. And now we're going to do the same thing for Smith. So Smith is 320 over 803 times 6424. And you should get 2560. Okay. Now it wants to know by how many votes would Cruz win. So it wants us to find that difference. So 3864 minus 2560. And that's 1304 votes. So he would win by 1304 votes. So as long as the population is selected, the sample is selected at random, you can generalize the survey results, or the poll results in this case, to the population. And when you generalize it to the population, it's proportional. So you can either, you could have set up a proportion and then cross multiply. You could do that if you want. I just think it's easier to do proportion times n, because that's what they're asking you all the time, right? Is what's the expected amount. So we would expect, according to the poll, that 3,864 would vote for Cruz. We would expect that. We're not sure, but we expect that. And we expect 2,560 people to vote for Smith. So again, we did the proportion. So the proportion times capital N. So capital N. All right, perfect. So 21 is B. Okay, we're almost done. We got one more. Okay, so this is a pain. I'm gonna be honest. This one's probably gonna be easier to it's another linear quadratic system. And remember, the way we tackle it is we substitute for y. They've been asking these a lot on these tests. But honestly, if you just use Desmos and guess and check, it's probably easier. So first of all, note that it says it has to intersect at exactly 1 point. That's really important. So Desmos and guess and check. That's what I would do for this one. Probably the fastest way. So let's go to Desmos, and then I'll show you how to do it by hand. Again, it's really not fun to do by hand, but just in case, you got to do it. Okay, so y equals 2x squared minus 21x plus 64. And then y equals 3x plus a. So little a for the first one is minus 8. So plus -8, or you could do just minus 8. And no, we don't guess and check. Yeah, I remember this one was tricky. You really couldn't guess and check, but let's come back to this. So yeah, it's not asking for the a, so we can't just guess and check. It's asking for the x where they intersect. So this one's really tricky. A million people would have put this one wrong, myself included, maybe. We're going to substitute for y. So let's do that. So I'm going to plug this in here. Again, y is by itself for both of them, so that's pretty nice. 2x squared minus 21x. 2x squared minus 21x plus 64 equals 3x plus a. And now we're going to move the 3x over, so we subtract it, and we get minus 24x plus 64. And we get, we're also going to subtract the a over, so we get minus a equals 0. Okay, now it's a quadratic, so now we can use the discriminant. So if you don't remember from my previous video, the discriminant d equals b squared minus 4ac. And when d is less than 0, you have no real solutions. When d is equal to 0, you have one real solution. And when d is greater than 0, you have two real solutions. So maybe pause this video and write that down. I'll give you a second. Okay, so we're going to do a is 2, b is negative 24, and then this is really important. C is the constant term, so it's this whole thing here, 64 minus a. So C is equal to 64 minus, let me do it in red. C is equal to 64 minus a. So now we're going to plug into d equals b squared minus 4ac. So d equals negative 24 squared minus 4a is 2, and c is 64 minus a. Okay, so if we start doing some numbers here, we get 576 minus 4 times 2 is 8. 64 minus a. And now we distribute. So 8 times 64 is 512. So we get d equals 576 minus 512. And then negative 8 times negative a, that's plus 8a. So we get 576 minus 512 is 64. So we get 64 plus 8a. And now it says it intersects at exactly 1 point. That means that it has one real solution, okay? So that means the discriminant is equal to 0, as the table suggests. So equal to 0. So we get 8a equals negative 64. So a equals negative 8. Okay, so now like everybody and their mother, myself included, would have put negative 8 as the answer. But it's not the answer. It says, what is the value of x that they intersect at? Okay, so now you can like go to Desmos. Now that you know a is negative 8, you can go to Desmos and look at the point of intersection, which is 6 comma 10. Okay, so it's 6 comma 10. So the y value is 10 and the x value is 6. So now we go back to the question and we say this is 6 comma 10. And it's asking for the 6. So the final answer is C. Oh my god, that was tricky, right? That was a hard question. But it is what it is. Um, um, so yeah. Okay, let's look at the next section. So I'm going to take a quick pause. Let me just make sure I put the answer. Okay, let's start module 2A. I'm going to bookmark this in the chapters. So if you did really well on the first module, you probably got put into module 2B. If you want, you can skip to module 2B using the chapters. I still recommend you do the questions from here and watch this video just so that you know the stuff that's on the test. Anyway, let's get started with module 2B or 2A. So this equation, we're going to move the 12. So we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. And we're going to get k equals 336 minus 12, which is 324. And that is the answer. Okay, here it says, when is the estimated number of check marks the greatest? So we're going to pick out the biggest value. So that's here. And that is in 1994. So it is the greatest in 1994. Alrighty. What is the y-intercept? Okay, so the y-intercept is the point where it crosses the y-axis. So that's right here. So x is always 0 for a y-intercept. X is always 0 for a y-intercept. So without doing anything, you know that C and D are wrong because they are not y-intercepts. They have to have x equals 0. And you see that from the graph, that point, y is equal to 2. So that would give us B, 0, 2. Okay, let's look at let's look at 4. Um, okay, so this is a unit conversion. So what you do is you start with what they want you to convert, in this case, the 51 meters. And then you make your parenthesis, and then you arrange the unit conversion in a way that the units cancel. So let's say I did 1 meter over 100 centimeter. The units need to be on opposite sides of the division sign for them to cancel. So I see, oh, nothing cancels. Oh, maybe I did something wrong. Let me flip it. Okay, 100 centimeters over 1 meter. Oh, okay. So now the meters is on opposite sides, so it cancels. So now you just go to your calculator and type in 51 parenthesis 100 over 1. And you should get 5,100 centimeters. That's it. Okay. Always make sure the units cancel and make sure you write it out. Because if you write it out, even if you do it wrong, you can fix it, right? But if you just do it in your head, you might make a mistake. All right, anyway. Okay, so this is something you got to know. So this is also a unit conversion, but they don't give you the conversion factor. So you have to have it memorized. So radians is just another unit for angle measure. Kind of like how we have inches and meters, okay? So pi radians is equivalent to 180 degrees. So we have 16 pi over 15 radians. And we're going to, again, try to cancel out the radians. So we're going to put pi on the bottom and 180 on the top. And we see that the units do cancel. They're on opposite sides. And you know what else for this problem cancels? What else is on opposite sides? The pi. The pi cancels. Okay, so now you just need to go and very carefully type on your calculator 16 over 15 times 180, and you get 192 degrees. So the answer is 192. Okay, so this is really important. Pi radians and 180 degrees. It's not on the formula sheet. They don't tell you, okay? So pi radians equals 180 degrees. You got to know that. All right. So let's look at 6. Let's keep going. What is the value of y when x equals 8? Okay, so we're going to just plug in 8. And really important, we like to use parentheses when we plug in. So y equals 5 times 8 plus 10. Okay, now you can just type that on your calculator. And you should get 50. So it's 40 plus 10, which is 50. So the answer is 50. Okay, looks good to me. Okay, so here's an equation you got to know for the test. Distance equals rate times time. Or D equals RT. That's how we write it with shorthand. Okay, so D equals RT. So he's going at a rate of 5.7, and it wants to know m minutes, so that's the time, and then x miles, that's the distance. So give me a second. I'm worried I might have made a mistake here. Yeah, so I guess the distance is x. The rate is 5.7 minutes per mile. No, when we use D equals RT, we have to have miles per hour. Okay, so you got to think about this one using units. So M equals, okay, so M is in units of minutes. And we need to get minutes. So we can't add or subtract x or x and 5.7 because you can't add miles to minutes per mile. You can't add or subtract things that have different units. So that doesn't make any sense. So these ones are out. Let me show you why it's multiply and not divide. So minutes per mile times x miles. See how the units cancel? And you get 5.7x minutes as well. So both sides have units of minutes. So that's the correct answer. 5.7x minutes, because the units cancel. Anytime you're adding and subtracting stuff of different units, anytime you're adding or subtracting stuff of different units, it's wrong. Okay, you can't do that, right? Like, think about it. Like, if I did 2 inches plus 5 miles, that just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so always check the units. All right, that was trickier than I originally thought. Anyway. All right, 8. Okay, Nasir bought 9 storage bins that were each the same price. Okay, so he bought 9 at a price of, let's call it X. So 9 times X is how much they cost. He used a coupon for $63 off. Okay, so we're going to take away 63. And then after coupon, the entire purchase was worth 27. So it's equal to 27. Now to solve this, we have to get the X by itself. Always move the farthest thing first. So we're going to move the 63 first because it's farther away than the 9. Okay, so we add 63. And we get 9x equals 27 plus 63. Which is 90. Now we're going to divide both sides by 9 to move the 9. And we get x equals 10. And that's the answer, 10. So the really hard part was coming up with the words to the equation. So 9 storage bins that were each the same price. So that's 9 times x. Okay. $63 off. That was minus 63. Was 27. So that's equals 27. That's how we came up with that. Again, sorry if I did that too fast. Okay, so 8 is 10. All right, let's keep going. Okay, 9. So how you solve absolute value equations. Okay. So let's say I had x minus 2 equals negative 5. X minus 2 equals 0. And x minus 2 equals 4. So first thing you always do is you get the absolute value by itself. If it's not by itself, you got to do algebra to get it by itself. All right. So what you could do is if it's negative, that means it has no solution because absolute value can never be negative. If it's equal to 0, it has 1 solution. And if it's equal to a positive number, it has 2 solutions. So no solution, you don't have to do anything. 1 solution, you just drop the absolute value bars, and then solve. So plus 2, so x equals 2. Always check to make sure it works. 2 minus 2, 0. Absolute value of 0 is 0. Good. Now for the two solutions, what you have to do is you drop the bars and then you write one equation like normal, but then you write another equation where you say x minus 2 equals negative that number, so negative 4. So we get x equals 4 plus 2 is 6. And we get x equals negative 2. And then maybe they'll ask you, what's the sum of the two solutions? So you add them, and you do 6 plus negative 2, which is 4. And again, remember, you have to get the absolute value by itself first. If there's a number in front of it, you got to divide it. If there's a number next to it, you got to subtract or add it to the other side. If I were you, I would memorize this table and make sure you know how to do it. So let me see here. Great. So I'm going to go over both of them, because what if they ask you a question where you have to do both of them, right? So you see we got absolute value equals positive number. So it has two solutions. So we can just jump right into it. We don't have to do anything. So x minus 5 equals 10, or x minus 5 equals negative 10. So you add 5 to both sides and you get 15. You add 5 to both sides and you get negative 5. So either of these answers is acceptable. You just had to put one. Now, let's say you forgot or something, right? I'm pretty sure you could just plug this into Desmos. So let's try that. So you press this little button down here, and then there's an absolute value. So we could do y equals the left side. So absolute value of x minus 5. And then y equals 10. And then we can zoom out, and we see that the left solution is negative 5, and the right solution is 15. So that's another way you could have done it if you didn't want to do the work. Any equation you can solve by doing y equals left number, y equals right number. Okay, great. 15 or negative 5. You don't have to put both of them, just put one. All right, 3 more than 8 times a number, x, is equal to 83. Okay, so 8 times a number, that's 8x. So 8x and then 3 more than, okay? That means to add 3. 3 more than means to add 3. Is equal to 83. So that means is equal to 83. That's it. These can be really tricky. Lots of people call this words to math. Words to math or words to math. You should just practice this over and over again until it's easier for you. I'm sure you could find some good YouTube videos on how to do this. Okay, so the answer is D. You don't even need to solve it. That's it. Great. Let's go to the next one. 11. Which expression is equivalent to 9x squared plus 5x? Okay, so this is asking you to factor. In particular, we're going to factor by pulling out a common monomial factor. So 9 and 5 don't have anything in common, so we're not going to pull out 9 or 5. But you see, both of them have an x. So we're going to pull out an x, and we're going to say, what times 9x squared, what times x gives us 9x squared? And the answer is 9x. 9x times x gives you 9x squared, rules of exponents. And then 5x times x, and then what times x gives me 5x? So the answer is 5. 5 times x is 5x. And you could like FOIL this to check. So not FOIL, you could expand it to check 9x squared plus 5x. Yep, we get what we started with. You see if you multiply it, that guy times that guy, and then that guy times that guy, we get 9x squared plus 5x. So it's x times 9x plus 5, which is a. Another thing you could do is, let's say you really, you didn't know what to do for any equivalent expressions question, even much harder ones than this. What you can do is you can type in the original. So 9x squared plus 5x and see which answer choice. So I'm going to do all the wrong answer choices. So x squared 9x plus 5. Okay, that's clearly not the same. It's in a completely different spot, right? Okay, let's do 9x times x plus 5. Okay, that's also clearly not the same. It's in a different spot. Let's do 5x times 9x. This would have taken a lot longer. I don't recommend this. 5x times 9x plus 1. Okay, not the same. Now let's type in x times 9x plus 5. Okay, you see, oh, it turns blue. It turns the red curve blue. That means they're the same because they're at the same spot. Okay, anyway, just another way to do it. You really got to know how to factor, so don't try to get away with not doing that, but all right, this one, if you had a CAS calculator, you could straight up type it in and it would do it. I don't have a CAS calculator, so I'm not going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine the like terms. Always check if there's a minus sign here that you make sure you distribute the minus sign to all the terms and change the sign. But we don't have a minus sign, so we don't have to worry about that. So 2x squared and combine the like terms, x squared. So that's 3x squared. And now we're going to do the x's. So plus x and plus 6x. So that's plus 7x. And then minus 9 and plus 1. So that's negative 9 plus 1. That's minus 8. So we get 3x squared plus 7x minus 8. And that is D. Great. All right, this one is great for Desmos. System of equations. Oh my God, we just plot it and we get the answer. That's it. So let's do that. So x plus y equals 18. You don't even need to get y by itself on Desmos. It just does it. Okay. And 5y equals x. Wow, that is handy. That is really handy. See, it's right there. 15 comma 3. All right, let's go back to the test. Okay, let me write that down. 15 comma 3. All right, that's A. Yep, that's it. That's all you got to do. Let's go over how to solve this by hand. You could use substitution or elimination. One of the letters, notice, is by itself. So when one of the letters is by itself, we like to use substitution. So let's substitute this in here. And we get, instead of x, we're going to write 5y plus y equals 18, which is 6y equals 18. Divide both sides by 6, and we get y equals 3. Okay, right away, we see that the only one with 3 as a y value is A. If you wanted to find the x value, you could plug it back in here. So x equals 5y, which equals 5 times 3, and you would get 15. So we still get 15 comma 3. Again, I think using Desmos, especially if I'm nervous on test day or something, I think using Desmos for these questions is just so much easier. On the graphing calculator, you have to worry about getting y by itself, and then you have to worry about setting the window and zooming in and zooming out. With this, it's the easiest thing in the world. You guys can't see me do this, but you just click around to drag, and then you zoom in and zoom out with the scroll wheel. It's very easy. If your computer has a touch screen, you could use that too. But If you have a trackpad and that's all you got in your laptop, that's a problem. You should really buy a mouse because this is so much easier to do with the scroll wheel. Like, it's not even close. Okay, anyway, see how I'm zooming in and zooming out? I'm using my scroll wheel to do that. All right, let's keep going. So, okay, so I actually have a graphing calculator program that if I plug in 2 points, it'll just tell me the equation of the line. So I'll do it by hand first, but so first notice that x equals 0. So this is the y-intercept. So that means b and mx plus b is 29. Now to find the slope, we do m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now you pick out any 2 points. So 32 minus 29 over 1 minus 0. So that's 3 over 1, which is 3. So the equation is y equals mx plus b. So 3x plus 29. And that is answer choice A. I highly recommend you get some sort of calculator program that can do 2 points from a line. I use the College Panda SAT program. So I'm going to do that for you right now. So we go to lines and we plug in 2 points. And my 2 points are, I'm going to do 0, enter, 29, enter. And then I'm going to do 1, enter, 32, enter. And it tells me y equals 3x plus 29. Boom. Okay, done. That's what I would have done on the actual test day. Anyway. All right, so 14 is A. Good. A equals 4 and B equals 5. Okay, so for Pythagorean theorem. So Pythagorean theorem, it's true for all right triangles. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. They told us A is 4 and B is 5. So 4 squared plus 5 squared equals C squared. And then you take the square root of both sides and you get C equals the square root of 4 squared plus 5 squared. I don't know why they left it as 4 squared plus 5 squared. I don't know why they didn't just have you add them. Like, as the answer, I would have wrote C equals root 41. I don't know why they did that, but again, it's a multiple choice test, so you got to make it look like whatever the answer choices look like, right? That's just how it works. Okay, so the answer is D. Good. Okay, for this one, if you remember, you click on reference up here to find the reference sheet. The area of a rectangle is length times width. So we're going to do 34, make sure the units are right, 34 times 29. And we get 986. Okay, that's it. All right, so for this one, the y-intercept is -8. So b is equal to -8. And the slope is -1. You can either use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, pick out 2 points and do that. Or you can do like rise over run. So see how like it goes down by 2, it goes up by 2, so that means 2 divided by 2 is 1, and it's negative because it's going down. Lots of ways to do that, but anyway, so y equals mx plus b. So I'll leave that to you. The slope is -1, so we would put -x minus 8, which is C. Great, almost done. What value of n when p of n is equal to 56? So we're going to replace this with 56. So 56 equals 7n cubed. Okay, now I'm going to divide both sides by 7. And I get 8 equals n cubed. Now we're going to take the cube root of both sides. Remember earlier I showed you how to do cube root on the graphing calculator? And we get 2 equals n. And that is the final answer. It is A. Great, so we just had to plug in. Again, because it says P of n is equal to 56. If it said P of 56, that would be a different question, okay? All right, so 18 is A. What is the x-intercept of the graph? Okay, so let's say you forgot how to do an x-intercept. You should know how to do this. Okay, so, but you could just graph this on Desmos. So y equals 7x minus 84. Okay, let's do that. So, okay, and we want to find the x-intercept. So we're going to click here on the x-axis, and it's 12 comma 0. So 12 comma 0, and that is D. I'm also going to show you how to do this by hand because it's really important. So whenever you want to find an x-intercept, you plug in y equals 0. Whenever you want to find a y-intercept, you plug in x equals 0. So we set y equal to 0. Now we're going to add 84 to both sides, and we get 84 equals 7x. And you divide both sides by 7, and you get 12 equals x, or x equals 12. And remember, we set y equal to 0, so that means it's 12 comma 0. Again, right away, you can tell the only one with 12 as an x coordinate is D. All right, great. 20. Okay, so the trailer has a weight of 500. That's your starting weight. And then it has boxes that weigh 120 per pound. So we're going to do 120 per pound times the number of boxes. That'll tell us X. That'll tell us the weight of the boxes. Then we're going to do plus the starting weight of the trailer, which is 500 when it's empty. And then maximum number. So it can be no more than 4,600. So you should, if you don't know inequality signs, you should look this up. Um, no more than means less than or equal to. So we're going to put less than or equal to 4,600. Now we just going to solve this guy. So 120x, I'm going to subtract 500 from both sides and get 4,100. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 120, and I get 34.16 repeating. And the maximum whole number box, because you can't have half of a box, right? Or 0.10th of a box. So the maximum number that satisfies that inequality that's smaller than 34.16 is 34. If it said bigger than 34.16, we would put 35, okay? But it says less than or equal to, so we're going to put 34. 34 is less than or equal to 34.16, so we're good. Great, so the answer is 34, and that is answer choice A. I feel like a lot of people would have put 35. They might have rounded up by accident. Remember, it says no more than. That means less than or equal to. Okay, great. Okay, so a length of 106 inches is cut into 2 parts. Okay, so the length of x plus the length of y is equal to the total length, which is 106. Then it also says x is 6 more than 4 times the value of y. So x 4 times the value of y is, so that's equals. 4 times the value of y, that's 4y, and then 6 more than, so we add 6. So you see this is a system of equations. Now I can go straight to Desmos and get the answer. So, but you had to write, that was the hard part. You had to write down those equations using the words, okay? So let's go to Desmos. So x plus y equals 106, and x equals 4y plus 6. I don't know why it did black. All right, let's see where it intersects. We zoom in. and it's 86 comma 20. So the solution is 86 comma 20. And I'm going to refresh here. All right, let's go back. So the answer is 86 comma 20. And it says, what's the value of x? So that's 86. So the answer is D. If you were going to do this by hand, again, notice we have one of the letters by itself. So it's probably more convenient to use substitution. So let's substitute. So x plus y equals 106. So 4y plus 6 plus y equals 106. So 5y, if we subtract 6 to the other side, we get 100. Divide both sides by 5, and we get 20. So y is 20, and then you could plug this in to this one. And you could do 4 times 20, that's 80, plus 6 is 86. So you still get x is 86. Totally could have done this by hand, but Desmos makes it a lot easier. Again, you got to know how to write equations from math. That was probably the trickiest part. All right, let's do 22, last one on this module. Okay, so let's go over the, you might want to Google this or YouTube it or look at it on Khan Academy if you don't know. So the postulates for congruence are SSS, SAS, ASA, and AAS. Those are the ones you have to know on the test. I'm not going to go over it. If you don't know what those things mean, you should look it up either in a book or on YouTube or on Google or on Khan Academy. Side, 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 angle, and angle, angle, side. There's one or two more, but you don't really need to know them for the test. Okay, so I'm going to draw A, B, C, and D, E, F. So A, B, C, and D, E, F. And I'm just going to label it like this. Just make sure, again, remember the order it comes in is really important. So make sure the order is the same. So A, B, C, and D, E, F. See how I'm moving in the same direction as I did with the left one? Okay, B and E each have 27 degrees. Okay, and C and F each have 41 degrees. Okay. Now you just have to guess and check all these. So no additional information is necessary. That's just wrong. Unless it's a right triangle, you need at least 3 pieces of information, and we don't have 3 pieces of information. We need 3 pairs of information. So that's wrong. The measure of angle A. Okay, so if I told you the measure of angle A, you still wouldn't have any of these postulates, right? See how all of them have S's in them? You need at least one side. You need at least one pair of sides. So yeah, that wouldn't really help. The length of side AB. Okay, let's say this is 8. That's great, but I would need to know the side of ED as well, right? Maybe ED is 8 as well, and then I could say angle, angle, side. But because it doesn't give us a pair of information, it doesn't help us. So this is wrong. So the answer must be C. Now, this is kind of confusing. It should say the lengths of sides. Well, I guess technically not. So let's say, I don't know, BC is congruent to EF. Let's say they're the same. Oh, see, look, now we have angle, side, angle. Angle, side, angle on both of them. You see that? So these guys are congruent by ASA. So all the other ones, no matter how hard we tried, they don't give us any of the congruence postulates. Great, awesome job. Okay, let's move along here. Okay, this is going to be the beginning of Module 2B. If you didn't get these questions, you don't have to do them. And maybe some of you guys that got this, you skipped from 2A to 2B to here. That's great. Let's get started. Okay, solution to a system of equations. All right, well, we're just going to pull out Desmos. 3x equals 12. Negative 3x plus y equals negative 6. All right, come over to this where they cross, and we touch it, and it's 4 comma 6. So let me go write that down. So 4 comma 6, and it wants the y value. Okay, so that's 6. So the answer is B. Okay, if you were going to solve this one by hand, I don't know. There's a couple ways to do this. I don't know. See how there's a 3x here and a 3x here? You could replace that. And you could make it negative, again, because it's a negative sign out in front, negative 12 plus y equals negative 6. Then you could add 12 to both sides, and you get y equals 6. That's another way to do it. You also could have got x by itself and then substituted. You also could have added them using elimination. That would have been really good here too. I honestly should have done that. Yeah, I still, again, even with how short this question is, I still think Desmos is easier. Like, you just can't go wrong with Desmos. You just type it in. That's it. Like, man, I don't know. Anyway, so the answer is B. Next one. Okay, these exponents and letters are the same, so that means we can combine the like terms. So 11 minus 5 is 6, so it is 6x cubed. That's it. So it's B. All right. Anytime you have the exact same equation, exact same expression on both sides of the equation, it has infinitely many solutions. You could verify that for yourself by graphing both of them on Desmos. Quick thing you might want to know when you have linear systems in slope-intercept form. So no solution, one solution, and infinitely many. I went over this in the last video briefly. So no solution, they have the same slope and different y-intercepts. So different y-intercepts. One solution, they just have different slopes. And infinitely many, they have the same slope and the same y-intercept. So, you definitely want to know this for the test. I would pause this video, write this down. You should have this memorized going to the test. Anyway, so 66x. So do you see if I rewrite it as 66x plus 0 equals 66x plus 0, you see that it has the same slope and the same y-intercept. So that means it has infinitely many. That's another way to think about it. This is a linear equation, so linear equations can never have two solutions, so this is just wrong right off the bat. Notice how in my table they always have 0, 1, or infinitely many solutions. Okay, great. So 3 is C, and again, any equation with the same exact thing on both sides has infinitely many. Okay. 3 times as many people voted in favor of the proposal as voted against it. Okay, so that means the people who voted in favor, F, is 3 times the people who voted against it, 3A. Let's use A for against. And then it says 15,000 more people voted in favor than against it. Okay, so 15,000 more than against. So A plus more means plus, add 15,000. Okay, we got both letters by itself, system of equations. We're going to substitute. If you wanted to, you could rename these to y and x, put it in Desmos. So 3a equals a plus 15,000. Let's subtract a from both sides. We get 2a equals 15,000. And now we're going to divide both sides by 2, and we get a equals 7,500. And the question's asking how many are against. So that's our answer, 7,500A. Great. Okay. It wants the interpretation of the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is always the y value when x equals 0. So it's 0, comma 30 is the y-intercept. If you plug in 0, you get 30. You also just know this because it's mx plus b, right? So b is the y-intercept. Okay, so when x equals 0, what does it say x is? It says x is the popsicles. Okay, so 0 popsicles, and y or f is equal to 30 fluid ounces remaining. So 30 fluid ounces remaining. Okay, so A and B don't even mention 30, so that's a problem. And Caleb had approximately 30 fluid ounces of juice when he began to make the popsicles. So when he began to make them, that means he had 0 popsicles. Okay, so that's right. So it's C. D is wrong because it says for each popsicle. So that would be if the slope were 30 or negative 30, but it's not. The slope is -5. So this one is the y-intercept. This one is the slope. And then B and D are both just wrong. Okay. So if you read A and you were like, oh, that sounds right, that's because it is right. But again, remember, it's not what they're asking you. So A is correct. It's just, it's not what they're asking you about. They're asking you about the y-intercept, not the slope. Okay, so the answer is C. Good. Yeah, so D and B are just both wrong. They like mixed up the slope and the y-intercept. So, okay, this one was on the previous module. So, you got to remember that there's pi radians in 180 degrees. They're not going to give you that on the test. You have to have that memorized or written down somewhere in your calculator program. I don't know. So let's say we have 16 pi over 15 radians, okay? And then we want to cancel out the radians. So we're going to put pi radians on the bottom and 180 degrees on the top. And notice the units are on opposites divides of the division sign. So we're going to cross it out. And then notice how the pi also is on opposite side of the division sign. So we can cross that out. And now you just have to do 16 over 15 times 180 on your calculator. And you should get 192 degrees. And that's the answer, 192. Okay, this one, guess what? I would only do you could guess and check each of these points. and plug them in and see which one has both inequalities true. That's what you could do. But I'm going to show you Desmos is a lot better for this one. So let me just scroll down a little bit here. So let's go to Desmos. So if you didn't know this, I learned this recently. You could type in greater than and then an equal to make it equal to x plus 7. And then you could type in y is, oh, I typed it wrong. It's less than or equal to. Great. And now we're going to do y is greater than or equal to negative 2x minus 1. And you see it gives us the solution is where it's red and blue. So this kind of right pizza slice over here out of these 4 pizza slices. So it's kind of like this rightmost pizza slice. Okay, now you can just plot all the points. So a equals negative 14 comma 0. And we can label it. And you can go b equals 0, negative 14. And we can label it. And we can do c equals 0 comma 14. And we can label it. And you see, d equals 14 comma 0. And we can label it. And let's get a better picture here. Okay, great. This is much nicer. Okay, so see how the only one that is in the solution, the shaded solution set for both equations, both inequalities, is D, 14 comma 0. So that's the answer. That's what I would do. I would just really quickly type that all in, and then you probably get the answer in like 45 seconds if you can type fast enough. Great. So the answer is 14 comma 0. I'm not going to plug all these in manually. I really don't want to do that. But just so that you can see what I mean, what if we did it just for this one? So it would be 0 is less than or equal to 14 plus 7. Okay, 0 is less than or equal to 21. Okay, that's correct. That's true. And what if we got 0 is greater than or equal to negative 2 times 14 minus 1? So that 0 is greater than or equal to negative 28 minus 1, which is negative 29, which is also true. So you see, if both inequalities are true, it's the answer. If you did this, what I just did with all of them, you would realize that at least one of them is false. Like you would get, like, for example, 8 is less than 5, which is false, right? So that's like kind of how they want you to do it, but like since they added Desmos, you really don't need to do that at all. I think just making the picture is a lot easier. Anyway, let me just refresh this to clear all this stuff. Okay, we're doing good. We're doing good. Let's see. 8. Okay, so a right triangle has legs, so that's the ones that are not the hypotenuse, so these ones, of 24 and 21. Now we're going to do 21 squared plus 24 squared equals x squared. That's the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared if I call this one x. So if you type 21 squared plus 24 squared, you get 1017. So now x is equal to, you take the square root of both sides, the square root of 1017. Okay, so now what the heck? So now you have to simplify this radical. If I were you, I would really put some kind of program on your graphing calculator that can simplify radicals. The College Panda program can do it. So let's see, I'm going to go to fundamental, simplifying radical, 1017. 1017. Okay, great. That's 3 root 113. Let me write that down. 3 root 113. And it says 3 root D. So D is, oops, D is equal to 113. So D is equal to 113, and that's the answer. So we put 113 in the box. If you were going to simplify this manually, this would be a huge pain in the neck. I suppose you could look at the final answer and recognize that a 9 was pulled out, but basically what you have to do is you have to come up with the biggest perfect square. So perfect squares are, you can Google it if you don't know them, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, etc. Okay. So the biggest perfect square, that's a factor of 1017. This is a huge number. I don't know what the factors are of 1017, but the question kind of gives you a hint by telling you that you can pull out a 3. So 3 is the perfect square, is the square root of 9. So we can write this as square root of 9, and then I can go to my calculator. Okay, what's 1017 divided by 9? Oh, it's 113. And you get 3 root 113. But like, that is such a pain in the neck. You should really just get a graphing calculator program that can simplify radicals. Because you see, that saved me a good 10 or 20 seconds, you know. And it probably would have saved most kids a ton of time because they just don't know what, you know, it's really hard to see the big number. You don't know what number goes into it. And if you didn't notice the whole 3 root D thing, it's going to be really hard to figure out. So yeah, I would just use the graphing calculator. See, this is why you can't rely on Desmos for everything, because the calculator is still better at some things than Desmos. So, and if you have a CAS calculator, I bet you don't even need a program. I bet it'll just simplify it for you if you type it in. Anyway, all right, good. So the answer is 113. Okay, you're not supposed to do this one by hand, but I'm going to go over how to do it by hand just because. So, so the frequency tells you how many of each number there are. How you find the mean from the frequency is you do mean equals sum divided by n. To get the sum, you do the frequency times the value plus the frequency times the value over and over and over again. So for A, it would be like 2 times 30 plus 4 times 34 plus 5 times 38 ... And you just keep doing that over 27. If you do all that, I get 1094 over 27, which is 40.52. Okay. Again, this isn't how you're supposed to do it. I'm just going over it in case you need to do this for another question. It's important to understand. We want to fully understand every question. Okay, so for the mean of B, we're going to do sum divided by n. It's also 27. They both have 27. And we would do 9 times 30 plus 7 times 34 plus 5 times 38, etc., etc., etc. And we would get 27. And this would be, maybe I did it wrong, but I got 958 over 27, which is 35.48. So you can see clearly from this that the mean of data set A is greater. 40.5, 40 is bigger than 35, right? So it's A. So they didn't mean for you to do that because that took a really long time, right? So what they mean for you to do is to use your intuition. Use your intuition. So see how this one has bigger numbers, higher frequencies next to bigger numbers, and this one has higher frequencies next to smaller numbers, and vice versa. So mean A is more heavily bigger numbers. So if it has bigger numbers in its data set, more bigger numbers, it's going to have a bigger mean. So that's the answer. The mean of data set A is bigger than B. So if you kind of understood the table well, you didn't have to do that. Also, if you take AB statistics, there's ways to type in frequency tables and it'll just spit out the mean, but honestly, that's probably harder than what I wrote off to the side. It takes forever to type in all those numbers. So anyway, yeah, so you weren't supposed to do the calculation. I just went through it just so that in case you see this question where you do have to calculate it, you know how to do it. Just trying to help you out. All right, 10. Okay, so we got another similarity statement. So the order in which the letters come in tell you which angles are equal. So angle Z and angle T are equal because they both come last. So angle X is equal to angle R, angle Y is equal to angle S, and angle Z is equal to angle T. So angle Z is equal to angle T. They tell us angle Z is 20. So angle T must also be 20. That's it. You don't have to draw a picture. You don't have to do anything. This right here is a red herring. It's telling you the proportion of the sides, but like they're not asking about the sides. They're asking about the angle. So you don't care about the sides, right? So you could just ignore that. I've seen questions like this before on the paper SAT. Anyway, great. In particular, this is pretty much exactly a question from the October 2020 exam. Anyway, so 10 is C. All right, another one of these unit analysis equations. So let's go through this. So first of all, the 5y clearly has something to do with large jars, right? So if it doesn't mention large jars, it's wrong. So B does not mention large jars and D does not mention large jars. Okay, now I'm going to write the equation. And remember, every term in the equation has to have the same units. So the units of the 32 is cups. So that means this guy has units of cups, and then all the terms have to have the same units. So that means this has units of cups, and this has units of cups. Okay, so it's asking about 5y. So 5y must have units of cups. Okay, so this one does not. It has number of large jars. Okay, so that's wrong. And this one says cups in the large jars. So it says large jars and it says cups. So that's the answer. So the number of large jars Keenan filled, that's Y. The number of small jars he filled, that's X. The total number of cups he filled in for the large jar is 5Y, which is what they were asking us about. And the total number of cups for the small jars is 3X. So you see, these are other correct interpretations. It's just not what the question is asking. So that's how they get you, right? They put a lot of relevant stuff on there, so it all kind of sounds right, but you have to make sure you focus in on what they're asking you, okay? Another thing they totally could have asked you is what's the units of the 3 and the 5? So the 3 and the 5, the X is units of jars. So the 3 must be cups per jar. And the 5 must also be cups per jar similarly. Because if you multiply by jar, then it'll cancel and you'll get cups, which is what we just said the units has to be. Anyway, so you got to know how to interpret every single thing. So you got to know for this problem, you have to know how to interpret 3. You have to know how to interpret 5. You have to know how to interpret 32. You have to know how to interpret X. You have to know how to interpret Y. You have to know how to interpret 3X. And you have to know how to interpret 5Y. They could have asked you, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 different things. They could have asked you about any one of those. So 3 is the cups per jar for the small jars, and then 5 is the cups per jar in the large jars. So they didn't mention those in this one, but they totally could ask that in a future question. Always remember, I always start with the units of the thing on the right side and then kind of piggyback it to the other ones because they have to have the same units. That's what you do. They've been asking this a lot. I guarantee you we're going to do practice test 3 and we're going to see a question just like this next week. All right, great. So it's C. Let's keep going. Okay, so for this one, I can just type in the left equation and the right side of the equation into Desmos. You could also use a graphing calculator. So x times x plus 1 minus 56. And I could also type in 4x times x minus 7. If you want, just to be consistent with before, you could do y equals, if that makes you feel better. Okay, let's get a better look at this. And let's see where it intersects. So here's one of them. Okay. So x equals 2.6662. Let me label it. 2.667. Okay, so that's 2.6666666666666. All right, that's 8 over 3. Okay, so let's write that down. So x equals 8 over 3. And then we're going to do back to Desmos. We got to find the other point of intersection, which I think is somewhere up here. Yep. X equals 7. So x equals 7. So the sum of solutions, we can just stick with Desmos here, is 8 over 3 plus 7, which is 29 over 3. And that is the answer. So sum equals 8 over 3 plus 7, which is 29 over 3. So 29 over 3 is 9.66666666, etc. So for the final answer, you could have typed in 29 over 3. You could have typed in 9 point, you have to do 5 characters, rounded or truncated. So 5 characters, so 9.666. So you see, and it says that on the left, right? Up to 5 characters. So it says truncating or rounding at the 4th digit. So that's what we did. So we truncated, that means to just cut it off. And then rounding, so you see to the right of 6, there's a number bigger than 5. So we could make it 9.667. But damn, isn't that isn't that confusing? Like, why would you bother rounding? Like, you know what I mean? It's like just go with 29 over 3. I don't understand why you would sit there and be like, man, am I typing it in right? Did I put enough digits? Like, it's not worth it. Just put the fraction. Even if you don't know how to simplify fractions, who cares? I just showed you Desmos plus your graphing calculator can handle fractions. So like, just use the tools that you have. It'll just do it for you. You don't need to know how to add fractions. Use Desmos or use your graphing calculator. Okay, so if you don't know how to simplify or add or subtract fractions on your graphing calculator or on Desmos, you really should learn because you see how helpful it is, right? Okay, so now let's go over how to do this by hand. So again, I think doing it that way was much easier, but oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. Okay, good. Let me just make sure my pen's okay. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I might just zoom in just a hair. Perfect. No. Perfect. All right. So first we distribute. So x squared plus x minus 56 equals 4x squared minus 28x. Then we get all the terms to one side. I'm going to move all the terms on the left to the right so that the x squared remains positive. And we get 0 equals, so subtract x squared, we get 3x squared. Subtract x, we get minus 29x. And add 56, we get plus 56. And now this is going to be really hard to factor. You'd have to use the AC method. So at this point, absolutely do not use AC method for this. You should just use Desmos, or if you have a graphing calculator, you have a solver on it, you could just type it in. And you get x equals 8 over 3 and x equals 7. And then again, you just add them. And again, please just use the calculator so they don't mess up adding fractions. Okay. Great. So that one was 12. So the answer, again, I would just put 29 over 3 if I were you. Okay, so it asks about the vertex. So vertex form, a times x minus h squared plus k. So hopefully you can notice that this is in vertex form. See how similar it is? So to find the vertex, you want to find h and k. So you circle these two numbers. And then you multiply the h by -1 because there's a minus sign. And you get, so -7 times -1 is 7. And then for the y coordinate, we just write whatever's there. So 3. So the vertex is 7, 3. Okay. All right. Now it says, now you should know that the vertex always represents the minimum or the maximum. Because A is positive, this one is facing up, okay? So the vertex represents a minimum. So the question should have the word minimum in it. So this one does not, and this one does not. So now it says the minimum height. So the minimum height, that's the y value. So the minimum height is 3. So you're going to go with the one that says 3, which is A. The minimum height is not 7, okay? The time it took to reach the minimum height is 7 seconds, okay? But the minimum height is not 7 inches, okay? So x is in seconds, y is in inches. So whenever they're asking you for the minimum or the maximum, most of the time they're asking you for the y value, unless they say something like, what's the x value where the minimum takes place? Or they say something like, what's the time where the minimum takes place? Then you would want 7. But for this one, we want the 3. So anytime you hear the word vertex, you should be thinking min or max. So we figured out it's a minimum. So we know the question has to mention minimum. And then the minimum height is the y value, which is 3. Great, let's keep going. Okay, this is a classic question. So I'm not going to go ahead and do it, but if you put this in slope-intercept form, you'll see that the slope is 9/5, okay? So slope is y2 minus y1, or you could write it as delta y over delta x. So change in y over change in x. Let's figure out what the x and y are in this question. So the x is the x. And they say that that's the temperature in kelvins. And the y is what's outside the parentheses, the F. So the y is the temperature in Fahrenheit. Okay, so why don't we, to make it less confusing, we write, instead of delta y over delta x, we write delta F over delta x. Let's use the letters that they gave us. And now it says the temperature increased by 2.1 kelvins. So because it says increased, we're going to put positive 2.1 kelvins in the denominator, because remember, X is the kelvins. So positive 2.1, okay? If it said decreased, we would put negative 2.1, but it doesn't. It says increased, so we're going to put, damn it, we're going to put 2.1. And it wants us to find the change or increase in Fahrenheit. So I don't know what that is, so let's call it delta F. All right, and then this is going to be equal to the slope, which is 9/5. So you see the slope is 9/5. And again, if you multiplied FOILed and combined all the like terms and put it in MX plus B, just trust me, you would get 9/5. You can try that yourself if you want. So 9/5. Great, so now you got a proportion, you just cross multiply. So this one times this one equals this one times this one. So 5 times delta F equals 18.9. Now you divide both sides by 5, and you get delta F is equal to 3.78. That's it. That's the whole question. A little tricky if you haven't seen one like this before. I've seen one like this on the paper SAT before, so pretty much this exact question. Okay, great. So 14 is A. Good job. All right, let's do 15. So it says the y-intercept is k minus 5 comma b. So remember, y-intercepts always have x equals 0. So that means that x, which is k minus 5, is equal to 0. So that means k minus 5 is equal to 0. And that means k, if you add 5 to both sides, k is equal to 5. So if k is equal to 5, that means this table transforms into 5 comma 13 and then k plus 7. So 12 comma negative 15. And now you have to find the y-intercept. To do that, you have to find the equation of the line. If I were you, I would get a graphing calculator program that can do this very quickly. That's what I'm going to do now. 5 comma 13. So let me go to the Panda SAT program. So 5 comma 13. And then 12 negative 15. So we get y equals negative 4x plus 33, and it says the y-intercept is 33. Great. So the y-intercept is 33. So 0 comma k minus 5 comma b is really 0 comma, and then whatever b is 33. So b is equal to 33. Great, so the answer is 33. Let's go over how to do this by hand. So let's calculate the slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is 13 minus negative 15 over 5 minus 12. That's 13 plus 15 is 28 over 5 minus 12 is negative 7, which gives you negative 4. Now you write the partial equation, y equals negative 4x plus b. Now you pick a point at random to plug in. I don't like negative numbers, so I'm going to plug in this one, 5 comma 13. And we get 13 equals negative 4 times 5 plus b. That's negative 20, add 20, and you get 33 equals b. So you could have done that by hand, but geez, that was a lot more work. I really think you should get the graphing calculator program if you want to get the questions right faster. All right, great. Okay, we're almost done. We're getting there. Okay, 16. So for this one, what you have to do is you have to factor it. So you first have to pull out a common monomial factor. Well, they're all divisible by 2, and they all have at least one x. So if you factor that, you get x squared plus 21x plus 104. Then, if it wasn't clear with you how to factor it further, you could use a graphing calculator program to help you, okay, or Desmos. So this factors into, remember, you want to think of, this is how you factor with a equals 1. You want to think of 2 numbers that add to this number and 2 numbers that multiply to this number. So the 2 numbers that do that are 8 and 13. 8 plus 13 is 21. 8 times 13 is 104. So we're going to write x plus 8, x plus 13. And it says one of the factors is x plus b. So I'm going to hold up x plus b. And you see, oh, it could be this one or this one. So b is equal to 8 or 13. And it wants you to pick the smallest one, the smallest possible value of b. So 8 is smaller than 13, so it is 8. So you had to pull out a common monomial factor, and then you had to do factoring like normal. Okay, factoring with a equals 1, that's called. If you're struggling with factoring with a equals 1, you really should get some kind of calculator or program that can handle it. Plus, you should honestly practice it on your own because it's really important for your high school math classes. Okay, great. What is the x-intercept of the graph? Okay, again, if you wanted to, we could use Desmos for this. I did this in the last section. Let me just do it again. So y equals 7x minus 84. And then you just zoom out, go over here, click on the x-intercept, and it is 12 comma 0. So that's it. So it's 12 comma 0 from Desmos, so that means it's 12 comma 0 here. You also got to know that x-intercept, plug in y equals 0. So y equals 7x minus 84. 0 equals 7x minus 84. Add 84 to both sides, and you get 84 equals 7x. Divide both sides by 7, and you get 12 equals x, or x equals 12. And we plugged in 0, so remember, it's 12 and then comma 0. Great. Okay, this was on the last practice test. When you have square units, you have to square the conversion factor. So the very first thing you're going to do 1 mile equals 1760 yards, okay? And you're going to square both sides to get square units. And we get 1 mile squared, or square mile, we could call it, is equal to 1760 squared, which is 3097600 yards squared. And that's going to be your unit conversion, this guy. So let me go down here and write this gigantic number, 11,863,808 yards squared. And same thing as before, we're going to do yard squared goes on the bottom so that it cancels. So we're going to put 3097600 yards squared. And then 1 mile squared. And we see the units cancel, yard squared and yard squared. Now you just go into the calculator and you type in 11,863,808 parentheses 1 divided by 3097600 parentheses. And you should get 3.83 miles squared, and that is the answer. So whenever you see square units, okay, you have to make sure that the conversion factor is squared. So this one we had to square it. Lots of people would have forgotten and they would have gotten it wrong. Okay, so 3.83 is B. That is the correct answer. Okay, so a room has a total wall area of W square feet, and they want to paint the room twice. So that means the total area is 2 times W, feet squared, to paint. And we want to know how much in gallons is needed to paint the room. So, and we've got 220 feet squared per gallon. So this guy here is telling us that it's 220 feet squared per gallon. So, it's a little hard to see, but we want units of gallons, right? And the only way to do that, to get gallons, is to divide. So feet squared cancels, and we're left with 1 over gallon, which is just gallon. So that's what we want, right? The question says gallons right here. And 2 divided by 220, you could just simplify that on our calculator really quick. 2 divided by 220, that's 1 over 110. So it's W over 110 gallons. If you went through all those other answer choices, the units would just be wrong. This guy forgot the 2 in front of the W. This guy forgot the 2 in front of the W. And then this one multiplied when you should have divided. If you multiply, watch what happens. 2W feet squared times 220 feet squared per gallon. If you multiply these, you get 440 W, right? But the units don't cancel, so you get feet to the 4th per gallon. That doesn't make any sense. What the heck is feet to the 4th? Okay. So anyway, so B is wrong too. So you can kind of use process elimination if you didn't see it. But you really, again, it's like you just had to have good unit sense for this one to set it up yourself. And you had to recognize that it said twice, so we need to do 2W. Okay, great. Almost done. Almost done. We're almost there. All right, so what I'm going to do for this one, I'm going to once again go over this in a table. Remember how we said same slope, different y-intercept? You can also do this for equations in standard form. So no solution is A over D equals B over E is not equal to C over F. One solution, A over D, is not equal to B over E. And then infinitely many is A over D equals B over E equals C over F. You could put these in slope-intercept form, but that would be so much work to put these in slope-intercept form. So much work. Like, because there's fractions and everything, so standard form works a lot better here. Okay. So, I highly recommend you pause this video and write this table down. Hopefully I didn't make a mistake. I think it looks right. Anyway, so to get the top one in Standard form, I'm going to subtract 30y from both sides. And I get 48x minus 102y equals 24. If this were multiple choice, you could just guess and check, but it's not. And then to get the other one in standard form, or at least pseudo standard form, I'm going to add 16x to both sides. So I get 16x plus ry equals 1/6. Okay, so now the not equal to portion of this isn't really going to help us. So we're just going to focus on this portion for no solution, because again, it says it has no solution. So a over d equals b over e. So 48 over 16 equals negative 102 over positive r. And now we're going to cross multiply, and we get 48r equals negative 1632. Divide both sides by 48, and we get r equals negative 34, and that is the final answer. What I would do is, if I were you, if you're low on time, don't do this, but if you had time, let's say you had time at the end, I would now type it into Desmos to make sure it's right. Okay, so we're going to do that now. Just the original, not what we wrote in the standard form. Okay, so let me refresh this. So 48x minus 72y equals 30y plus 24. And now we said r was negative 34, so we're going to do negative 34 r, negative 34 y equals 1/6 minus 16x. So everything is exactly as in the question, except I replaced r with negative 34. Okay, no solution means they're parallel. That's the picture I made before, right? Oh, these guys are parallel. They're never going to cross. So we did a good job. We're right. So you can, like, if you're one of those kids that's like, man, did I get it right? Don't just sit there scratching your head, type it in and you'll be able to tell. And you see, I wrote it exactly as it was in the question so that we can make sure, because if we use the second form, what if you use the second form and then you wrote it down wrong or something? Then you'd be kind of messed up. So I would just always use the original in the question. Great, so r is negative 34. We just confirmed that the answer is correct. Okay, so now these next two questions are two of the hardest, maybe not 21, but 22, definitely one of the hardest SAT questions I've ever seen. So what we're going to do is, what I did was I saw the least common denominator is square root of x squared minus c squared. So I cleared the denominators. So you multiply the whole thing by the least common denominator. So you multiply the whole thing by square root of x squared minus c squared. Now the denominators will cancel. So you get x squared equals c squared plus 39 times root x squared minus c squared. So you see, right, like if I'm looking at the left guy, it goes away, right? And then if you're looking at the middle guy, he goes away, right? But if you're looking at the right guy, he doesn't go away, so you got to keep him. Okay, now we get we subtract c squared and we get x squared minus c squared equals 39 root x squared minus c squared. And now we divide both sides by root x squared minus c squared, and we get root x squared minus c squared. I did this a little bit differently than the answer key did, but whatever you think is easier. Now we got a square root, so we're going to square both sides. So we square both sides, and we get x squared minus c squared times x squared minus c squared. That would be x squared minus c squared squared. And then the square root goes away on the bottom. So you also get x squared minus c squared. And you get 39 squared. Notice how one of these guys goes away. And we get x squared minus c squared equals 39 squared. Get x by itself. So x squared equals c squared plus 39 squared. Now, when you take the square root of a square in an equation, you have to make sure you put a plus or minus in front of it. So you get x equals plus or minus square root of c squared plus 39 squared. So it's either positive square root of c squared plus 39 squared, or it's negative square root of c squared minus 39 squared. But positive square root of c squared plus 39 squared is not an answer. So it must be D, which is negative square root of c squared plus 39 squared. Wow, that was a tricky question. Yeah, I was definitely scratching my head when I first saw that. That's a tough one. And this next one's even harder, but hopefully I can help it make more sense. Okay, so 22. So the very first thing you should notice is it says it opens upward. Okay, so that means A is greater than 0 and it opens upward. Then it tells you this business. F of negative 9 equals f of 3. So that means that the y value at negative 9 is equal to the y value at 3. And parabolas, when that happens, they're symmetrical. And the vertex is right in the middle of those two x values. So we can find h by averaging those two x values. H, the x coordinate of the vertex. So h is equal to negative 9 plus 3 divided by 2. We average them, we add them up, divide by 2. You get negative 6 divided by 2, which is negative 3. So the x coordinate of the vertex is negative 3. Now you can use another piece of knowledge. There's an equation, and you can start finding some of the other constants. So h, there's another equation you should know. H equals negative b over 2a. So h is negative 3, b is 4, and a is just a. So you can now solve this equation for h. So let's do that. So we get, multiply both sides by 2a, and we get negative 6a equals negative 4. And then multiply both sides by, divide both sides by negative 6, and we get negative 4 over negative 6, which, if you simplify that on your calculator, is 2 over 3. So that's 2 over 3. So a is equal to 2 over 3. So the question says a is greater than or equal to 1. Okay, well, that is wrong. 2/3 is not greater than or equal to 1. Okay, so now at this point, I'm just going to do this down here because I have no room. Okay, we have y equals ax squared. So 2/3 x squared plus 4x plus c. And the question also tells us that, so we know what h is. We know h is negative 3. And we also know k is negative. And we also know it's opening upward. Okay. So that means it looks something like this. So negative 3 is over here. And k is negative. So that means the y value of the vertex is negative. So that means like it must be below the x-axis. So it's like in quadrant 3. And it's opening upward. So notice how it has 2 x-intercepts. That means it has 2 real solutions. And that means we can use the discriminant. If you don't remember the discriminant, I went over that earlier in this video, and probably in the last video too. Okay, so it has 2 x-intercepts, so it has 2 real solutions. I'm going to write that, 2 real solutions. So A is 2/3, B is 4, and C is just C. So now we do B squared minus 4AC, which is 4 squared minus 4 times 2/3 times C, and that gives you 16 minus 8/3 C. And if it has two real solutions, that means it's greater than 0. So if I subtract 16, I get, I'll add 8/3 C. How about that? 16 is greater than 8/3 C. Now I'm going to flip it because we want the C on the left side. Whenever you solve an inequality, you want the variable on the left side. So 8/3 C is less than 16. See how I flipped it? Now you're going to divide both sides by 8/3, and you could just do this on your calculator. So 16 divided by 8/3 is 6. So C is less than 6. Boom. Okay, so we figured out A is 2/3 and C is less than 6. Okay, well this says C is less than 0. That's not necessarily true. C could be 1, 2, 1.5, 1.01, 3.8. It could be anything as long as it's less than 6. So both of these are wrong. So the answer is D. Man, what a hard question that was. This is one of the hardest SAT math questions I've ever seen. And I've done all the tests since 2015. So, okay, great. So that was the last one. I hope the way I might have explained it a little bit different than the answer key. I hope it makes more sense now. If you look at the answer key for these last two questions, it's just going to be a block of text, and you're going to have no idea what's going on. So I hope the video and my explanation made these a lot easier for you. Okay, that's the end of the test. That was the end of Module 2B. Time for the outro. So, again, my name is Kyle. Thank you for coming to my channel. I hope you found this video helpful. I'm going to be making videos for every single digital SAT math question, every single one. So if you would like to see more of my videos, please subscribe. And I'm going to put my website in the description. If you are interested in my tutoring services, please check out my website. You can contact me through my website. My contact information is on there. I tutor all sections of the SAT, and I tutor all academic math subjects from about 6th or 7th grade to like AP Calculus, AP Statistics, to like early college math. So I'd love to connect with you. If you're interested, please check out my website. Again, I hope you found this video helpful, and have a good rest of your day. Good luck with your studying. Thanks.